momento prego la chiamano per una collettiva. Bleiben Sie bitte am apparat, Sie werden für ein Konferenzgespräch verlangt. Un instant s'il vous plaît, on vous demande pour une conversation conférence.
Pronto? Ciao Poppy! Adesso vi passo Chiara!
We're going on a tour around the world. It'll take a bit of time because the world's quite big. It's a conference call where I give a strong spiritual thought that we can live together. And then one of my companions, Ailey, tells that all that's happened during the months, so that everything belongs to everyone. It's wonderful to be part of this. It's an enormous joy. I understood this, that it's almost greater than the joy that comes from unity. Because we participate not only in unity in the Church as one, but also in its universality because the whole world is involved. When we call the zones and they answer, "Hello, how are you?" So it's the life of a family. It's wonderful. Its aim, as we know, is to help us go on a holy journey, a journey towards holiness.
Hello, everyone. Good evening to everyone. We are absolutely thrilled to be starting this link-up. And after having seen this beautiful graphic, this introduction, I felt moved looking at the roots of the link-up, which now we're picking up once again after a few months. There was this great desire to be a global family all over the world, to help one another, to go forward together, to walk together on this journey to become saints together. So we're thrilled to be linked up. And it's a wonderful coincidence that in these few days here at the International Centre of the Movement, we have the meeting of all the people responsible for the different geographical areas from all over the world, as well as the General Council. So we feel that the whole world is here in this room now. And my great joy is seeing here around me many young people. There are young people from Italy here in the hall, so we're very happy to start this evening together.
Hola, yo soy Marianela, una retrace de la Argentina. Ahora estoy en el Centro Internacional y les damos una bienvenida a todos los hispanohablantes que nos siguen.
Bravo. Bonjour, je m'appelle Louisiane, je suis une Gen 3 française et bonjour à tous ceux qui nous regardent.
大家好，我是高迪亚，我是一名第二代新青。在这里我问候中国大家庭里的每一个家人。
Ciao a tutti, ciao, un saluto, vengo dall'Africa centrale.
I'm Salvatore, I'm Italian. I live in Togo in West Africa, and I greet you in the language of that area.
Ciao, sono Cecilia.
Hello, my name is Cecilia. I am about to go to Oceania, to Australia.
Bene, grazie Margaret, grazie di cuore per questo.
Thank you, Margaret. Thank you for this worldwide greeting. We've really started well. I'm Lorenzo Russo, a journalist. I work in the communications office here. My wife is here and our children, Gabriele and Beatrice. At last, the link-up is back. First of all, I'd like to say a big thank you to all of those who, from all over the world, are following this transmission. Thank you for all the ideas, feedback, contributions to the editorial office to help this link-up to be faithful to Chiara's original inspiration and also capable of making us a family today in this increasingly interconnected world. So let's start our journey with two recent events. The first, which finished a short while ago in Assisi in the city of St. Francis, was the Economy of Francesco, the global event. Hundreds of young entrepreneurs and economists from 30 cities around the world were connected. They continued their journey in creating an economy that cares for the least, is capable of caring for the planet, and building a process of global change. I would like to invite you to check out the site, the website, francescoeconomy.org. 1 week ago, another event, the event Dare to One, concluded the Ecumenical Conference of Bishops, Friends of the Focolare. There were 181 bishops from 45 countries and 70 Christian churches. Orthodox, Anglicans, Lutherans, Catholics, Reformed, bishops of the Eastern Oriental churches, just to name a few. We spoke to 5 of the bishops who took part.
Some time ago, we sat together to think what will be the future development of the Focolare in the field of its bishops' groups. The one observation was that the ecumenical landscape had changed, in that we had reconciliation between the major churches. The second point was that we realized that Christianity, the impact of Christianity, had moved from the north to the south. Our churches are shrinking, and in Africa they're booming, and in Asia, and also in Latin America, for example. Different types of churches, traditional, Pentecostal, charismatic, independent.
Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. Wherever you are, whatever time it is, you are most welcome here among us.
Sweet refreshment from your celestial home.
We wanted to extend this network of communion among bishops of different churches, various churches, and that has happened in this meeting. We've groups in Pakistan, and groups in Uganda, groups in South America, and it was wonderful to see this network extending.
Gave them new light to be together.
Great to see this network.
There were actually 3 important moments for me at the meeting. First of all, that we were connected together, also with those who joined through Zoom. That was very strong for me. The second one was when we had this text that we called the Pact, where we say, joy is my joy, your sorrow is my sorrow. We carry, so to say, each other's crosses. And the third was the meeting with the Pope. I felt a strong unity, really, with him.
In the face of the shadows of a closed world, where so many dreams of unity are being shattered, where a project for all is lacking, and globalization is drifting without a common course, where the scourge of the pandemic risks exasperating inequalities, the Spirit calls us to have the boldness, the parousia, of being one. As the title of your meeting says, Dare to be one, starting from the awareness that unity is a gift.
Dare to be one the gift of unity in a divided world was very important and very fruitful, especially for all the bishops' participants. It was amazing when we used a special, let's say, picture given by St. John Chrysostom. He said that we are like trees which are planted by the river. We do not choose where to be planted. The tree absorbs all the nutritions which are important for life, to survive, to continue, and be a fruitful tree. The Word of God is like the water, so drinking from the words of the Holy Gospel makes us more rich and to come also to realize that talking together and being together, it's a gift which is given from God. The gift of unity, it's a gift given from God for everybody.
واغفر لنا خطايانا كما نحن نغفر لمن أخطأ إلينا.
Some people wonder what use is there for leaders of churches or theologians to have a theological discussion, or for the bishops to come together to discuss theoretical and theological matters. But I think to come together in a joint spiritual life, to listen to the Word of God and to pray together, it changes us and it changes our attitude towards the other. We consider the others that we are members of the same family. We belong together. At some point in the history, we could have hated each other, but it changes us that we love each other. It changes our communities, our churches. We realize that God, who has so much loved the world, also wants to love the world through us, and so that we love each other and with love change the world.
Welcome, Jesus. We saw you at that extraordinary meeting. Now, what prospects are opening up? Perhaps it's a bit early to understand really what happened. It was a historical event, a prophetic event. One thing that could be said is that there was an enormous effort to move from what we've done during recent years, which were ecumenical meetings. We're moving towards creating a network, an ecumenical network of bishops. And this is important for the future. This wouldn't have been possible without counting on the worldwide presence of the movement. You were speaking about a network, which can link together, go beyond all the gaps. Let's go into one of these divisions between peoples, nations. Let's go to Afghanistan.
Kabul Airport, Afghanistan, August 2021. Thousands of people are fleeing the country in search of freedom and a secure future. 4,800 of them have arrived in Italy, and a small group has been hosted in a center of the Focolare Movement. This is the story of the friendship that made their arrival possible. The friendship between Costanza Quattriglio, an Italian director, and two Afghan actors, Basir Hang and Mohammed Yan. They are of the Hazara ethnicity, which has been persecuted for many years.
The Taliban were about to take over Afghanistan. One province after another was falling into their hands. I called Costanza because during those years, difficult years, she was the only person who opened her heart to our community. She listened to us when no one else did. She listened to us when nobody wanted to hear what we were saying. Now Costanza is part of our community. She's one of us. Just as 20 years ago, I had to walk over the dead bodies of the Hazaras killed by the Taliban in Kandapush when I was fleeing. This time, my sister, Nazarin, said she had to walk over dead bodies on that terrible day when she was fleeing from Kabul airport.
Nazarin is the only one left there, because in the end they all managed to leave, even her mother and her brother, Latif.
It is normal that we cannot save everyone, that we cannot get everything and everyone out. But for people who are in danger, you always try to do your best. That's what Costanza did. She helped many other families to get them out of that hell in Kabul. Costanza and I met initially through work. We didn't have an easy relationship, did we? We worked a lot. We made a documentary, and then, you could say, a short film.
When I decided to make the documentary on unaccompanied foreign minors, my interests went back a long, long way, because I studied law and I was passionate about the rights of minors. When I then met Jan, you never said, I am Hazara. And so for me, he was an Afghan boy. I was struck by the fact that he acted as a mediator for others. And he was also hot-headed, because you were never calm, goody-goody person. So this ability to be involved in things, the attention, the care, the caring things he did towards others when he brought them tea.
I don't know if she remembers this. She said, I'm an only child, I have no brothers. You are a brother to me, you are my brother, so we are siblings.
We are Hazara, a fraction of this fragile humanity, but over the centuries, we have not lost our willingness. We raised from the ashes of our bones, and we will keep rising.
I met Basir in Milan when I was beginning to believe that we really were going to make this film that I dreamt of for so many years. And with the help of 2 casting assistants, we'd started to look all over Europe, all over the world, but starting from Italy. And the first person that I met was Basir.
I decided to tell the story of the Hazara people, the extermination of the Hazara people, because in my life I got to know them through people who came into my life, because at a certain point our paths crossed.
She also filled our minds and our hearts because she did something that in all those years, in this century, nobody else had done for the Hazara people. It's true. Maybe you don't realize this because for you being a filmmaker is normal, but for us, no one ever listened to us. We didn't manage to make ourselves known, to tell our story to the world. But in just a few years, just 16 years, you have somehow managed to tell our story. If we start thinking positively, we know that in the world there are not only a lot of problems, violence and ordeals, there are also people. There is also humanity.
C'è anche l'umanità. Gli esseri umani tutti sono fratelli.
All human beings are brothers and sisters, and whoever tries to break down those walls that we've created for centuries to divide human beings into specific groups, whoever manages to break down those walls belongs to the world, belongs to humanity. Whoever manages to break through that wall, Bazir said, belongs to humanity. There are so many walls, large or small, that we come across, perhaps even just by stopping at a traffic light. In the next stories, we go to Brazil, India, and Nepal.
A partir da pandemia, a gente começou a observar nas ruas da cidade número muito grande de...
During the pandemic, we began to notice large numbers of people on the streets, at traffic lights, who were holding signs asking for help. We had an idea. Why not replace these signs with something else, something that gives people more dignity? And that's how we came up with the idea of the flower seedlings. Mother's Day is celebrated here in May, so why not sell flowers for mothers at traffic lights? Our group's aim is to generate income. By selling the flowers, these people can sleep in a hotel or maybe a hostel, which is much better than sleeping on the street. There's also the aspect of financial management, because for every seedling we give to people to sell, we ask for 50 cents, half its value. The other half we get through donations or fundraising. We are a group, and all those who are helping me, starting with the volunteers, already feel a great presence of God among us.
Uma presença muito boa de Deus assim entre nós, sabe? Porque a ideia, quando veio essa ideia das flores, foi uma...
This idea of the plants came from nowhere, and my mum and I felt that Jesus was at work guiding us when we saw those signs.
Entre eu e a minha mãe, que a gente via esses cartazes.
Because of this pandemic, I had no future. I couldn't support myself or work or whatever.
Thanks to the project, I can relate to people, make a living, as well as give them a hand, which is very nice for me. That's what I think. This shows that there's a lot more to a person than meets the eye. Regardless of whether they're on the street or not, they're all wonderful people who have a lot of potential. You just have to give them a chance, like Lorenzo did.
E a gente por exemplo, eu me sinto muito realizado. Eu saio de casa.
I, for example, feel very satisfied. I wake up feeling very happy. I leave the house early because I know there are things to do. We play music together. We chat with the people. They tell us what they need most, if they need blankets, clothes. So it's a very friendly group that we have created.
Grupo bem fraterno assim que fica entre nós. Através dessa nossa ideia já chegamos a duas outras.
Through a project, we've already reached 2 other cities here in Brazil, Belo Horizonte and Joinville. The idea is to plant a seed, and through this seed, to reach the whole of Brazil.
A ideia é se espalhar por todo o Brasil, né?
The COVID pandemic is still raging on. There is a
COVID-19 pandemic has stepped into the second calendar year. In my own country, last week I checked, we had crossed 35 million people. It is a public health crisis. We also know there is a mental health crisis, this physical disconnection. There's another big crisis, and that's the educational crisis. Children have not gone to school. So the invisible face of the pandemic are the children. It is a crisis of multiple dimensions. It is a crisis that requires all of us to come together.
Almost every person we were connected to had a case in the family and was struggling. There was a sense of helplessness with stocks of medicines running out, unavailability of hospital beds, of oxygen cylinders, and some of our own members passing away without even the possibility of fighting the virus. At one of our online meetings where Archbishop Felix Machado of the Diocese of Vasai was also present, at a certain point he excused himself and wanted to leave.
During the meeting I got a telephone call. And when I got the phone call, it was about the emergency situation in our Catholic hospital. Lives would be lost. There was a situation where we needed a kind of a standby oxygen cylinders. This is the dire need of the hour. People were dying because they could not breathe. And I couldn't bear this.
This cry couldn't be ignored. It was a big struggle, but with the support and generosity of many, we managed to procure 17 oxygen concentrators, some ECG machine and ventilator machine for 3 hospitals. And we tried not to just send the funds, but to ensure that the machine, along with the technical engineer, reaches the hospital.
God has given me multiple friends because of these groups in the church, these movements in the church. And so I'm ever grateful to the Focolare movement. We can help one another.
Once till late night, we were making calls to find a bed in a hospital for one of the members of our Focolare community.
I felt very weak. We started checking on the hospitals whether there was any kind of beds available, but at that particular moment, there were no beds. So I could not even pray because, you were feeling so helpless, I could not be dejected. They were keenly observing and my progress, and I'm sure they were also praying for me. that I will get well fast. And all these things helped me, you know, because I found that I was not alone.
It was almost impossible. We could only go down on our knees and pray for a miracle. The next morning, a bed was found in a good hospital. In Mumbai, a group of young people of the Focolare were moved to do something for the underprivileged, whose plight had worsened, causing it difficult to even procure a proper meal a day. So they cook once or twice a week and distribute about 100 food packages to the people, even those who are under the bridges. And they still continue this initiative and attracting also young people from the nearby parish. The small community in Nepal is also connected with the Focolare in India, and the crisis was as alarming in Nepal as in India. In fact, the lockdown withdrew the main source of their income, which is tourism. So with Yo, one of the members of our community there in Nepal, we managed to gather some funds locally and also with the support of Focolare members in different parts of the world. And with those amounts, they managed to support families who were struggling. In fact, in a letter that she wrote to us, she ended saying, I really want to thank you all for the unity that we experienced here. We felt so connected with the Focolare community all over the world. I think in some way she echoes what we in India feel as well.
The pandemic has given us a real chance to live our faith. Also, the collaboration between individuals, between families, between institutions, because the crisis is beyond even governments. The world has to come together. Here, the testimony of the work of the Focolare Movement and Shanti Ashram is a great gift. Shanti Ashram and Focolare throughout the country, we were speaking to one another, we were helping. Our young people were doing concrete acts of love. I know this Collegamento is going to be on October 2nd, which is the birthday of Mahatma Gandhi. And I think now, in the midst of the pandemic, I think the whole movement can celebrate this thought of Mahatma Gandhi. Faith does not admit of telling alone. We have to live it. How wonderfully we have lived together. The pandemic is not over. Let us continue to pray. Let us continue to find the meaning of unity in the midst of a crisis. Let us continue to serve our fellow brothers and sisters.
Bene, qui con noi Pasquale Ferrara.
Here with us is Pasquale Ferrara. He's an ambassador. He's a professor of political theory of the international community at the Sofia University in Lopiano. Welcome, Pasquale. The stories we've just seen tell of a commitment to building signs of fraternity in very different social, political, and cultural contexts. Often they seem to us just small drops in the face of the complexity of the world situation. What do you think? Well, these stories strike me because, however small and limited they seem, they represent something which is very deep, and they change the way in which we recount the events of the world. We often ask ourselves, what's the relationship between ordinary people living ordinary lives and international events, international politics? It's clear that conflicts, for example, change people's lives. We know this, but things also work in the opposite direction. People's lives influence conflict. We're celebrating Mahatma Gandhi's feast today. And we realize that these big situations are not just kept in balance by geopolitics. International politics is based on a kind of a micro foundation of gestures, of choices, of people and communities. For instance, in Afghanistan, we've seen, it's very symbolic, because more than international security, more than being an issue of security, it's a question of human security. This shows that the international politics in reality is rooted in the choices that we make each day in our lives. I'd like to ask you this, that despite the efforts of everyone, there are wars, divisions. What point is our journey to unity? In your opinion, what should we focus on in today's world? Evident that there are new polarizations, new divisions in the world. I think that sometimes they're the fruit of the fact that we're not connected with reality. We're facing everything at a planetary level, the pandemic, and we've seen a nationalism of vaccines when we should be all working together to combat this pandemic. And people are trying to claim parts of the sea, which is a common good for all. The true question of international politics is not a question of war and peace. The real point of reference for what's happening today is inclusion or exclusion. And so walls are a consequence of this, not a result. And we are losing respect for diversity, even in international politics. And there are a lot of things that result from this. In English, you use the term like-minded countries, which think in the same way. Thinking, and we often make this mistake, that people will become more united if our political and social systems become more and more the same. This is mistaken, and it's also an illusion. Multiplicity is the flowering of humanity. We've all read the stories of the Tower of Babel. It seems negative. But in reality, this is the point, that diversity, even the diversity of languages, is an enrichment. And we have to depart from this respect for diversity in order to build a better world. Now let's go back to Margaret. Pasquale was telling us that multiplicity is the flowering of humanity. You, in your story, in your experience, you've met walls, but you also have a beautiful experience and you know how to heal wounds.
Yes, I'd like to share with you, before answering the question, I'd like to share something personal. A few days ago, I realized that it's 40 years since I left my homeland, the Holy Land, to follow this path of unity. I was 19 years old, and I felt that God was calling me. In my country, there was much injustice, there were wars, there were people who hated one another, there was disunity at all levels, and I felt truly, deeply that I wanted to give my life so that there should be unity. So that was 40 years ago. I left, I was on my own, age 19, and I said to myself, goodness me, I was really courageous. In that Arab town, a young girl leaving on her own. It was unusual to travel to come to Italy. Perhaps it was only the second journey overseas that I had done. So I needed courage to do this, but I was convinced that this was the path to heal the wounds in humanity. And that's why I left everything. I followed Chiara along this path, and hearing these experiences now, it was confirmed for me that to live for unity is worthwhile. But the secret to living for unity is also a very simple one. It's to love every neighbor, every brother or sister, every neighbor. And this thought of Chiara's that we will hear says this very thing. Where does our holiness lie? Where does our changing ourselves, changing the world lie? It is in loving each neighbor. So I felt, meditating on this thought, I thought, Margaret, 40 years have gone by. You left home, you were on your own. Chiara was speaking, these are the first years that Chiara was speaking about this journey, traveling together, the holy journey. And now, looking at these 40 years, where have they gone? At what point am I at? So I took courage when I heard this thought, where Chiara was saying, let's start again, as if it were the first day. So now I feel that if then I was on my own, now there are many of us all together, all of us all over the world, who can start again, set out again together now on this journey, loving our neighbor.
Let's listen to this brief part of a text from Chiara, which is going to be read by an actress, Stefania Bogo.
All our responsibilities can be summarized in helping our neighbor. This is confirmed by one of those sentences of Scripture that center on love and that strike a chord within us. For the whole law is summed up in a single commandment: you shall love your neighbor as yourself. If that is how things are, then our striving towards holiness means focusing all our attention and all our effort on loving our neighbor. For us, striving towards holiness is not so much about trying to be rid of our faults one by one as about loving, thinking of others, completely forgetting ourselves. But we know that whoever loves their neighbor, whoever lives for others, soon realizes that it is no longer they who live, but Christ lives in them. Christ lives in their hearts. And who is Christ? Who is Jesus? He is holiness. We find holiness in Him, whose presence emerges within us because we love. Our holiness comes as a consequence of loving, and we cannot reach it in any other way. If we were to seek after holiness for its own sake, we would never reach it. So let's love then, and nothing else. Let go of everything, even the attachment to holiness, striving only to love. This is the only way we'll be able to make a gift of our holiness to Mary one day. Let's set off again, as if today were the first day of our revolution of love, the first day of our holy journey. Let's set off again, not thinking of anything else, because love sums up everything. Let's try to love every neighbor as ourselves, and do so by immersing ourselves in every situation.
Bene, è arrivato il momento di salutarci.
So the moment has come to say goodbye, but let's join Chiara, starting again on this journey, on this revolution, as if it was the first day, together with all our family. Thank you for following this link up. You can watch it again on the YouTube channel of the link up. And there are the editions that are all in the different languages. You'll find all the different clips of the stories which have been told today, and you'll be able to share them. Behind me, you'll be able to see the events that we'll be able to watch together over the next 2 months. You'll find these on our Facebook page, on the link-up page, on Focolare.org. The next link-up will be on the 27th of November at 12 o'clock Italian time. So thank you all and see you soon.